Those that shall not work shall not eat.
It was a very harsh existence. The fact of them surviving was very low.
You conquer your fear, then you conquer all else.
I wouldn't want to be here. Let's put it that way.
There's no gold, there's no silver. And the gentlemen that have brought you here have played a gross deception.
If you come from up north like I did, you never were taught about Jamestown. The prevailing lesson was that the first arrival was at the Mayflower up in Massachusetts, the Pilgrims landing there to escape the religious persecution in England.
By the time the Pilgrims arrive in 1620, there are no less than 22 settlements up and down the Jamestown River. I come from Lincolnshire, fishers and farmers, and they both stink. My father, a yeoman farm, wanted better for me, see, to an apprenticeship where I worked 16 years, to a merchant. I had not been upon my apprenticeship 6 months when my father died. Near 17 I wanted to become a soldier. I crossed the channel. We arrived full of vinegar just after a siege, and we with no experience were sent to bury bloated bodies, piles of limbs, arms and legs, and I determined that it shan't happen to me, and found an aged knight at Lincoln. He had been driven away from his country, Greece, by the Turks that had seized his land, killed his livestock. And for a year and a half, he taught me proper how to mount and ride a horse, how to manage a lance on it, how to manage a sword. But most important, he taught me the words of an Italian named Machiavelli, the art of war, how to properly engage a siege. And near 19 I'd crossed the channel, my heart dark to revenge him against the Turks. Through advance I made to Hungary, where Baron Kessel, commander of the artillery, engaged me. He took me in, a young Englishman, a red hair, red beard, and 'twas a siege, and they knew not how to free those that were with him, the Christians, as the Turks threatened each day to kill more of them. We would feign an assault toward the front, all the Turks to the embattlements to the front, and a few spies well placed would open the rear gates. We would pour in, and we put near all of them to the sword. I was awarded my captaincy for valor upon the field. Nay, I was awarded 500 ducats, nigh on 150 pounds sterling, in command of 250 horse. And for 5 years nearing, I fought in battles, engaged and led Hungarian troops, those Transylvania. It is a bloody ground there. 9,000 Christians, 1,500 made an escape by cutting their way out, but the rest were left dead or fall. I was left that way. And after 2 days, peasants did come as they do, to sort through the dead, the spoils of war. And they started to remove my arm, and I groaned. He brought me water. They took me to a village, made a great deal to make me comfortable. And then they brought a Turkish slaver, and they sold me to her. And for a year I broke stones with chains about my ankles. And one day, the overseer, he took too much for granted, and it cost him his life and his clothes. The chains that he put on my arms brought him to his death. I took his clothes and his horse, and for a fortnight I rode westward by the sun and the setting thereon. In 1605, I crossed back the channel visited my mother, and I heard stories from London. An adventure to come to Virginia. Captain Bartholomew Gosnell made known to me, and he'd heard of me. Captain John Smith, the Englishman had killed so many Turks and survived the captivity. They gave me no notion of my role, and we were bound for the Chesapeake Bay.
Their hopes were, as the Spanish had found, they would find gold. Then the financial investment made by the Virginia Company would yield them great wealth.
A third gentlemen, a third laborers, and a third them of some skill as blacksmiths and coopers. I made query as to how is it that you knew we would find God? And the gentleman a rebuff. Well, surely we will. It's the New World. Look to the south and the Spaniards, but what of any other European countries that have entered the Chesapeake? Have they vouchsafed brought evidence that there be gold here? One of the gentlemen accused me of mutiny for merely making the inquiry as to how you knew we would have gold here. They put me in chains, accused me of treason, and told me when we arrived a gallows would be built and I would be on. April 26th at dawn, all of our worthies gathered in the Admiral's cabin to unlock the sealed box. On top, the list of names to be upon the council. 6 names, mind you, 6. 5 of them proper gentlemen and present. But the 6th name, truth upon it, third from the top of 6. He was upon that ship. He was below deck in chains. Captain John Smith. You are to sail no less than 100 miles from the ocean. Make it difficult for the Spaniard to find it, for once they understand you have entered within their realm, they will seek your destruction. Find a place upon high ground. Find a place easy to defend it. Find a place with fresh water. The 14th of May we come ashore, begin to clear. None of the gentlemen made query as to why it were uninhabited. We erected our tents, cleared. Just here.
One of the reasons they came here is they thought that was fresh water, but it turned out to be brackish.
And that great effusion of ice and snow melting made the brackish water just sweet enough. The gentleman said it were paradise. And whatever you do, settle no closer than 50 miles from any of the naturals. And everywhere you look, in the distance, plumes of smoke from villages. And I thought, how is it we would separate ourselves 50 miles when everywhere upon every river you see them, the plumes of smoke from villages scattered about. The chief of Caspar, 8 miles up the river, claimed it as his private hunting preserve, which is why he attacked for it. 26th of May, in the midst of the morning, one of the gentlemen took note, a gathering near 200 of the naturals to the north, bowmen. A short while later, near doubled that, and then they fell upon us. Any one of the bowmen at 30 yards, 9 points at 10 will strike a squirrel from a tree. Upon a run, any bowman, quiver full of arrows upon a run, can strike in what they aim at 8 times a minute. And it takes 3/4 of a minute to load a musket but once. It started to be 105, then it was 104, then young Master Mutton 103, then 10 more, 93. And then the summer did come. And we began to die. We were destroyed. Cruel diseases, swellings, fluxes, burning fevers. By the 10th of September, we buried 47 more.
As a matter of fact, they sunk down to where there was only 38 left.
There were never Englishmen left in a foreign country, in such misery as were we, in this newly discovered Virginia.
They felt that if the natives saw how many people were dying, they would then decide it was safe to attack. That location over there is out of the sight line of the natives, and so they buried them under cover there. We found 4 graves here, which is inside the chancel, and they are all very prominent people. Now, one of the graves here is Gabriel Archer. Gabriel Archer is buried the opposite way of the other 3 folks, which indicates that he's a Catholic. Anglican burials would typically, the dead would rise to face the congregation, and he would rise to face New Jerusalem. Inside his coffin, we found a silver box. It's very fragile. We haven't opened it yet. Inside the reliquary, we found 3 bones and a vial of liquid. Perhaps, let's say, Gabriel Archer was a friend of the Pope. Is he part of a Catholic cell that's amongst the early settlers, or is he sent here by the Catholic Church to kind of keep an eye on this and to report back to him? We do not know, but we do know that inside this church, the wedding of Pocahontas took place in 1614. There are various stories as to how she helped John Smith escape from the wrath of some of the natives, in particular Powhatan's brother, Obenchickacanoe, who wants to take over the tribe. He doesn't like the British at all. He's trying to harm him, and that's what Pocahontas does. Intervene, but not as a person who throws herself upon John Smith. She just kind of intervenes, between the chief and his brother, and kind of prevents the killing of John Smith. Our artisans used the same tools they would have used in 1617 to recreate the church. The plaster, comes from Ace Hardware. Sorry about that. But back in the day, they would crush oyster shells and perhaps mix it with some sand and bonding with whale blubber and horsehair. So we do exhume the grave. We are able to examine the remains using isotope analysis, and we find out that the person buried here had a predominant diet of corn, which meant that he'd been living here for a while. In his bones, we found a lot of lead. He ate off of pewter. And as he ate off his pewter, perhaps he threw a tomato in his salad, maybe put a little vinegar on top, and that lead leached into his bones. So even though he thought he was a big, high-status guy, he was actually eating himself to death. So what we have here is Lord Governor George Yardley's tombstone. We engaged a person in England named Turry King. When they found some remains in a parking lot in England, they engaged Turry to help them with the identification. Turry is a pioneer in what's known as mitochondrial DNA, and so she was able, through the use of that and other methods, to determine the remains they found in England were King Richard III. We again have engaged Turry and others to take the DNA samples we have and test them against some of those people we believe it might be, in the hopes that we will confirm who is here. We know it's not Jimmy Hoffa, by the way, so put that out of your head. Here lies not George Yardley. We have George Yardley's tombstone on top of somebody else. So behind this burial was a later grave, and it was very curious because there were 2 heads in it. As that later grave was dug by the gravedigger, he all of a sudden had an oopsie, and he somehow got the head of the person laying here, and he decided just to scrape it into the grave behind him. Wash his hands, get his $2, go home. He's a happy old gravedigger. Sometimes archaeologists will find something that's kind of exciting, but they don't want to show it to the public yet as they're digging it, so they kind of circle around it, and they did that over there by the brick oven. But they found some human remains there. Those human remains were sent to the Smithsonian. The Smithsonian came back to us and said, this person's been cannibalized. We were able to identify that the person there was a young lady, late teens, we think, and she died of natural causes. The times being so hard, and you can say that it was maybe a crime of opportunity. I don't know. In our Archivarium, which is the museum that contains all our artifacts, you can actually view the skull that was found.
John Smith, he's bigger than life. And he's only here for 2.5 years. He was held in captivity. Today we would call him MacGyver. He's a survivor.
Seeing is believing, believing is seeing. That's what we have here.
Thank you all, truly from the bottom of my heart, for coming out and visiting us today. Tell folks to come to the original site. We've got a lot going on. Archaeologists dig Monday through Fridays. Come back and see us. Thank you.